Hi and welcome to Real Talk Fitness with AMPT. I'm your host, Ashley Cummins. For those of you that are just jumping on, I'm a mum of two busy boys and also the owner and founder of AMPT, and we like to call it not just a gym. In today's episode, it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. Someone that I look up to as a mother figure and someone that I really inspire to in the world of business is Rihanna. But Rihanna has been through so much, and I really wanted to share what I like to call the messy middle. So the mindset, how we've overcome things, and just get a little bit of her advice in terms of, a massive accident, her life completely turned upside down at the age of 25. So I want to share that journey with us today. So let's welcome Rihanna to the podcast. All right, so welcome to the podcast, Ree.
Thank you for having me.
No, that is more than okay. I feel like, as we briefly spoke about prior to pressing that record button, I feel that, sharing your story can inspire people more on the mentality side of things. So, obviously we've faced physical, challenges and humps along the way. But I feel like the mentality is what people don't see, like what goes on inside your head, daily, weekly, all of those sorts of things to overcome, what you've gone through. So.
Yeah, well, hasn't been an easy road, that's for sure. It's been a long one.
So for those that are just jumping onto Real Talk Fitness and listening to the podcast for the first time, Ree's journey has come from, being a busy mum to then being in a car accident and tragically losing her arm, and then learning to parent, and then, going to para swimming at high levels and all sorts of things throughout her journey. So in today's episode, I really want to, share Ree's story in terms of the highs, the lows, and the in between, and sort of, I guess, proving to everybody that is listening that it is possible. And even those that you look at and you see how successful they've been doesn't mean that they didn't have bad days.
Absolutely.
So, and I really want to share your puzzle analogy. I feel like a lot of people could use this, and we'll get to this to everyone listening, jumping the gun. But so I guess kind of give us a bit of a background, Ree, just for anyone that's listening. So, obviously, as I said earlier, tragically losing your arm, but, take us back to, your life and what it looked like, and then, obviously up to that sort of tragic thing, and sort of, talk through your story so people can sort of understand the background of where we're going with this.
Yeah, well, from the if you want to go back to the beginning, I was in a really bad car accident when I was 5 years old. My brain wouldn't stop bleeding, so they had to rush me back to hospital, and I ended up with a very severe brain bleed, which led to my pupils dilating. So I was in hospital for a bit. Fast forward to, turning into an adult. I was just like everybody else, found a partner, got married, had children. I had children young. The kid's father worked away overseas, so I was home with the kids 24/7.
Yeah.
So Sean was born in 2004. Danny's born in 2001. 4 days after Sean's second birthday, I was in another severe car accident. So it's exactly 20 years and 20 days apart since car accidents, which is quite weird.
Yeah.
So 4 days after Sean's second birthday, I was in a car accident. The car that I was a passenger in went through a stop sign. A B-double truck T-boned our car. The car rolled multiple times. And in that frame of the car rolling, my arm was completely chopped off, severed. And it was down, sitting on the road, 10 meters down the road. So I sort of, when you're faced with something like that, your body shuts down and adrenaline takes over. And I think that's what protects your body a bit. Um, so I remember my seatbelt failed and I ended up so we were in a 100 series Land Cruiser. I ended up in the back of the car, like being thrown around.
Wow.
I remember two teenage boys getting me out, and then I sat on the side of the road waiting for the ambulance. And at that point, I didn't know my arm was severed. I thought my arm was broken. Until I had it, like, because it was in July, so it was cold. So I remember I had a flannelette shirt and a jumper on because we were going fishing. And I just remember being soaking wet. I don't remember seeing anything. I just remember hearing everything. And I remember this lady, and I can never forget her voice. And she goes, "Oh my God, that lady's lost her arm." And I knew it was me because I was just soaked to death in blood. And the paramedics got there pretty quick. Like, from the statements that I have, I think it took them 7 minutes to get to me.
Wow.
There must have been a paramedic close. And then they gave me the green whistle and tried to lay me down and put, like, your neck splint on you and, do all their stuff that they got to do. And because they've gave me the green whistle, like, I'm high as a kite. And I'm like, I'll be right. Just chuck me and my arm in the back of the ambos. Let's go.
Yeah, wow.
And then I think they put me straight into a coma. And so, yeah, 7 minutes at the hospital. I don't remember any of the transformation from the ambulance into the hospital. I do remember being woken up, and I don't remember seeing anything or hearing anything, but like when you're laying on an operating table, there's that big light at the top. I remember seeing that, and it was just so bright. That's the only thing I remember. And then they go, "We're putting you on a chopper now and sending you to Brisbane." And I'm like, and then I started screaming for my husband because I said I wanted to say goodbye because I thought I was gone. Like, and they wouldn't let him in. So I could hear him screaming and then me screaming, but they ended up letting him in. And then I did hear a paramedic say, "She might not be alive when we get there." So I don't know how long the helicopter ride took, but in the notes that I have, it said that I respiratory arrested, so stop breathing.
Yeah.
Once in the helicopter. So once they took me off the helicopter and straight into trauma, I spent 14 hours in surgery. So they took a nerve graft from my left leg, used it as microsurgery to reattach my arm that I had lost. And then I was taken out of surgery, straight into ICU. I remember them waking me up. And I know I'm laughing, but the first thing I said to the doctor is, "Did you save my arm?" And I looked down and I'm like, "Thank fuck." And that's what I said to the doctor. And then I had this, on the paperwork it says 3 hours, but to me it doesn't seem that long. But I had this excruciating pain, like an electric current run through my whole body and straight out through my toes. And then that's it, I was out again. So I must have gone back into a coma. And then my husband had to sign a form. They said, "Oh, her arm is dead and there's nothing we can do." So he had to sign a form and say, "You have to take her arm off."
Wow.
And then yeah, I don't remember much for a while. Like, I was in a coma for ages. I had to learn how to, because I got brain damage. My left knee, well, basically my whole left side of my body was crushed. So I had to learn how to walk and talk again, which happened pretty quick. Not so much the talking, but the get up and walking. I got, I was in physio. So I stayed 3 months in hospital over the whole time. The first couple of weeks, straight into physio and up and going again.
How did you cope? Like, obviously, 4 days after your 2-year-old's first birthday, like, for a lot of mums that do listen to this podcast, like, that is emotionally traumatic. Like, how did you, obviously you just went through such a traumatic event yourself, but how did that emotionally impact you?
Well, I don't remember much of it. Like, I was on a lot of heavy painkillers, so a lot of it is a bit of a blur, and then a lot of it, like, my kids weren't in the car accident. So, and now that I think back, I'm like, where the hell were my kids? Who had my kids?
Yeah. So it's
You
like,
know,
it's
like,
funny how you're, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because they were being babysat while we were going fishing.
Yeah.
Like, so, and because there was other people in the car, I was in the back seat. Yeah, like, and I still think now, like 20 years later, I'm still trying to piece things together.
Yeah, because
But
it's like what you said at the beginning there, how your body just went into shock, and like that 3 months probably would have flew by, but a lot of it you probably mentally or emotionally blocked.
yeah. And that's what your body does to protect you, I think. Well, that's what I tell myself, I suppose, to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
through
Well,
it.
no, I think
But
you're 100% right, because that adrenaline is obviously what kept you alive. And then, the trauma afterwards, like, there's a reason why you don't remember so much of it. And I always say to people, there's a reason why, like, even as babies, we don't remember teething. Like, that's painful. We don't remember any of all of that sort of stuff. It's kind of like your body learns to sort of block it out.
yeah, absolutely, especially when it comes to trauma and any time of trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So I feel like, obviously once you got back on your feet, you soon had to learn what life was like. Like, in that split second, as you said, you were on your way to going fishing, like not once did it cross your mind that your life was about to change forever. Like, what were the hardest parts of this period, learning to do everything different and accepting that this is your life?
well, like when I left, so I spent 3 months in hospital, and then I went and stayed at my nana's house because she lived close to the Brisbane hospital, and I still had to go back to hospital every second day, and then a nurse come every other day to have bandages, changes, wounds checked. I had staples in my body, I had cuts, I had bruises, I had everything going on. And then when I finally got signed off to actually go home, we didn't even have a house. We had sold our house, just moved from WA to Queensland. So it was like, do we need to get finance? We need to buy a house. We need to do this. We need to buy another car because our car was written off. So it was like we had to do a lot really quickly. And then my husband had to go back to work. He worked in Africa for 3 months on, one
Yeah.
month off. So it was like, you have to go back to work because we got no money. I need to, start being a mum. And it was really hard. Like, I struggled. I'm not going to lie. It was probably the worst part of my life.
Yeah.
Like, I was on so much medication, so much painkillers, everything from phantom pain to arthritis to everything in between, like it was hell.
And
And
you had to be a mum.
yeah, and then the trauma of it. And then my husband had left me because he had to go back to work, and then I had to settle the kids in. We were there on a holiday. We weren't even living there. So it was like, now I have to find my kids' schools. Now I have to find daycare. Now I have to do this. And it was just like,
Yeah.
it was a fucking roller coaster. And
Wow, like
then,
it's so crazy. Like, and I feel like a lot of people, listening would be like, what was the hardest part that people wouldn't see from the outside? Like, obviously, everyone listening would be like, oh, wow, like, she's going to have to learn to parent with one arm, like accept her identity with one arm. But what was the hardest period of all of that people don't see? Like, what was going on and
the
thought in your head?
the two hardest things that stick to me are, so Danielle had really long hair down to her bum, excuse me, and then I had long hair down to my bum too. So then we all had to, like Danny and I had to go get our hair chopped off so I could manage it.
Yeah, wow.
And then just, like hugging my kids, not hugging someone with two arms. Like when that's what you've known your whole life up till I was 25 when I had the accident, and it still hurts me today that I can't hug my husband or my kids or the people that I love. I can't, I don't feel like I'm cuddling them enough because I don't get that full wraparound hug. You get half a hug out of me these days. So
Yeah, no, like,
they were the two
wow.
things that really stuck, that until now still really stick to me.
And how did you, like, because obviously, like, you know, as much as it's physical, you wouldn't be where you are today without winning that mental battle, like that constant chatter. Like, you know, how did you overcome that? Because I feel like a lot of people listening, like, you know, and I kind of said it to you before I press record, like, you know, in the 15 years that I've been in the fitness industry, like people, you know, often quit when it gets hard, right? Like that chatter gets loud and it's difficult. But once you kind of get through that, obviously you can see that it was all worth it. But in your aspect, that mental chatter would have been to the next level. How did you manage that while still showing
Well,
up for your kids?
and if you want me to be honest, the first 12 months was the worst, and I tried to drink myself to death. I took all my tablets every day with a bottle of bourbon, and I didn't want to
Yep.
do it. I felt like I couldn't do it. I didn't
Yep.
have it in me to, because I had like such a bad childhood too. Like I thought, fuck, do I have to go through this my whole life? And then one day I woke up and I threw all the tablets in the bin. I threw the bottle of bourbon away and going, my kids deserve better than this. And in that fact of like my kids, you know, like Danny was at school age. So I was like, kids can be cruel, you know.
Yep.
So I was like, what am I going to do to make this better for my children? And it took me years to find my groove. It took me, you know, like the highs and the lows, and I couldn't really do anything for myself because I was still doing hospital checks every week. I was still going to trauma counselling twice a week. You know, like it
Yep.
consumed my life for so many years. And then we packed up from Queensland and moved down here. And like I was like, and all the kids are at school. I'm like, what do I do now? What do I do for me that's um going to get me out of my head? And I went
Yep.
down to the pool, and it would just so happen that there was a disabled swim coach there. And she goes, oh, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm just here just to do some laps and get some fitness. And yeah, and then we hit it off, and that's where my swimming journey started.
Yeah, so you found something for you. Like, let's just kind of go back to when you just woke up and you're like, you know what? My kids deserve better than this, because I feel like, you know, on such a higher level, right? Like even when I analyze that, just listening to it, I got goosebumps. But on such a higher level, right? I see so many people day in, day out, when it gets hard, they throw it in and walk away. And like in your hard, you know, as you said, you didn't think that you could do it. You didn't, you know, you were basically becoming a victim to your own life. And then you just woke up and was like, that's it.
Well,
What do you feel like, you know, to anybody listening, like what sort of come over you? Like obviously, you know, children are a massive reason, but I feel like, you know, in other people's contexts or, you know, takeaways from that is that, you know, our health and our life and, you know, making your life what it is today is our responsibility. And I think, you know, hearing you just wake up and go, that's enough. What came over you? Like, what was it that just dramatically changed?
um, probably because I had seen other trauma, or the trauma that I went through as a child, you know, like coming from a family of alcoholics, and the same family, amazing sport, like world champions in my family, you know, like in sports. So it was like you've got a choice. And
Yes.
the choice is mine. And what I do with it is, do I just live every day for what it is, just a day in, day out Groundhog Day, or do I do something with it? But I did it more for my children than I did for me. Like
Yeah.
I didn't want my kids to become victims of what happened to me.
Yeah. So I guess like taking that piece of advice, like I feel like so many people, and I'm going to pop that into the podcast notes as well, is that so many people can take that and, you know, as you said, like you didn't want your kids to be a victim to that. And that was like a massive reason. But you also realize that this is my choice. And I
Yeah,
feel like
absolutely.
I feel like a lot of people could definitely take that mental advice because, you know, on your level, you've overcome it on so much of a higher level than most. And, you know, not to compare anybody's story because everybody deals with things differently and everyone's journey is different, but we all have a choice. And you're right. Like your choice was you could continue down that path or you could choose better.
And I didn't wake up and go, well, this is what I'm going to do. It took me, you know, like, to find my groove. What got me out of my head noise? And what gets me out of my head noise is music, my headphones, and walking, you know, like,
yeah.
a lot of people locally see me walk, they go, oh, you walk all the time. And I'm like, that's me getting out of my head.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
And
like, and
obviously,
so many songs, if you listen to the lyrics, resonate with so much of what we live through.
yeah, 100%. And I guess, like, you know, as you said, like, it wasn't like if we go back to when you're 25 and then, you know, moving down here and finding swimming and that sort of stuff. I think a lot of people want instant fixes for, you know, wherever they are in their life, right? Whereas you've just kind of identified that, yes, okay, you woke up and you realized that it was your choice, but going from, you know, where you were to para swimming, like at high levels, wasn't an overnight thing.
No, like my body had been through hell, so, you know, I had to get back moving, and then, you know, you had to build muscle, and then, you know, you're registering for your first race, and there's so much emotion and so much going on, you know, like, I remember one of my first races at Sydney Olympic Pool, and people that are younger than me, because when you're classified as a disability, it's not on age or anything, it's actually what you're classed as in your disability. So there could be a 6-year-old that I'm racing that has, you know, one arm as well, and then there's a calculation that they do. So I'm on the start block next to these younger ones, and then at the other end, they've all got their mums and dads. My kids are standing at the end of the pool with a towel waiting for me, and I'm like, this is insane. Who does this?
Yeah, wow.
But once I got past the fear, even especially wearing a swimsuit, having your arm cut off, you know, and all your scars showing, once I got through that fear, I think it became a lot easier.
Yeah, and I guess, like, I feel like, again, a lot of people listening to today's episode will benefit from, like going through that and the doubt that, you know, as you said before, like, what the fuck am I even doing? Like, what, like, you know, all of those sorts of things. And the fear, like, fear holds so many people back from, you know, even trying, right? Like, even getting to that point where you were, like, on the starting blocks in a swimsuit, like, you know, learning to live this whole new life. Like, that's a whole nother level of mental resilience you build. And I know that it's probably hard to go back and think because it's kind of like, oh, yep, I've done that. But what did that all teach you about yourself? Like, you know, because it would be constant, you know, mental chatter. But what did that teach you about yourself?
That no matter what position we're ever put in, that there is a way around it, and you have to find your way, not someone else's way. And mine was my kids. Like, I when you become a parent, and if you're a good parent, you know, like, nothing else matters but those children. And I had to turn myself into a hero to protect them, I think, from the rest of the world, because, you know, kids at school can be cruel and adults can be cruel, and I turned myself into a superstar or a hero in order to protect them. Well, that's what I thought I had to do.
Yeah, but in that journey, like, it's funny how, like, you know, you made something of it, right? Like, if we go back to, you know, 5 minutes ago in our conversation, it's like at one point in this journey, you were becoming a victim to it. And then, you know, fast forward years later, it's like, you know what, like, as you said before, and I think, again, I'm going to definitely pop that into the notes, is that you know, there is always a way around it. It's just like, you know, finding that way. And I love how you said then finding your way. So many people look at other people's journeys, which is why I really wanted to share yours, is and they look at their journey and be like, oh, you know, like only if I could do that. And it's like, well, we all have a different way.
Well, we live our life the way we've been given it, you know. Unfortunately, my life was turned upside down. But then
Yeah.
I had to adjust to the way it had been given to me. I I never asked for any of this, you know, so it was
Yeah.
just a matter of going, well, this is what I've been dealt with. These are the cards that I have, and you know, what hand do I play? You know, do I want to do I want to lose, or do I want to, you know, have some sort of a great life, which I think I've had, you know, despite losing my arm, despite having brain damage, despite the scars, the 56 surgeries, all the bullshit that goes with it. I've met some amazing people, trained with some absolute professionals, met, you know, like I met Bethany Hamilton, who lost her arm in a shark attack. And we catch up when she comes to Australia, you know, like I've met some amazing people and got to do some amazing things too, you know, that
Yeah.
I never thought I would do just being a mum at home.
Yeah, see, and like that is just a prime example, right? Like on such a, and I said this in the beginning, on such a higher level. Like I think for anybody that's listening, if there's one thing that you can take away is that, as you said before, we're all given a deck of cards, I guess, and it's just all how we play it. Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, just because, you know, as you said before, you didn't have the best upbringing, not once did you ask for any of this, but you continued to play your cards to benefit you rather than, you know, cry that victim mentality and become a prisoner to the cards that you were dealt, basically.
Not only just to myself, but to everybody around me. You know, like my marriage fell apart too, because the kid's father, like my husband, he was the driver of the car. So I had to save him from going to jail because he was in the wrong. So, you know, like there's so many moving parts to it. And then our marriage broke up. And then I had to find, you know, like, was I ever going to find love again? You know, who would want
Yeah.
someone with one arm, you know, and two kids and being a female and, you know, like there's so much that no one thinks about.
No,
And
100%.
you know,
Yeah.
and people, and like even moving from, so we, you know, like going from WA to Queensland, having the car accident, moving down here, the people down here, unless they're family or friends that I've known since before, they only know how strong I am now. They didn't know me before the accident and or what it took me to get through that. You know, they didn't see the tears that I cried or the tantrums that I've had because I couldn't tie my shoes, or, you know, like all that shit in between, you know. And that's sometimes that gets to me. Like people go, oh, you're amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I am, but you didn't see me before either, you know, like.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a whole nother reason why I wanted to get you on the podcast today, is because I think people need to hear that just because you are where you are now doesn't mean that your journey was linear. Like it wasn't like, okay, yep, do this, do that. You know, we all have ups and downs, and I feel like the biggest takeaway from this is like on again, and I keep coming back to it, like yours is on such a you know higher level to most. And again, I don't like comparing because everybody deals with things differently, but you know it's not a matter of going, I'm going to get there overnight. It's a matter of having a vision. Like your vision was that you know you're not going to give up for your children, you're not going to, you know, fall into self-pity, you're going to become somebody, you're going to do something and be better. And I think, you know, as you said, tying your shoes, things like that, like, and having tantrums and whatever else it is in between. I think people, as you said, they look at where you are now and go, oh, like if only I could do that. Like you're so strong. And it's like, well, everybody has the ability to be that.
Absolutely. I look at life now as in every day is a new day. If something doesn't go right for me today, I have a chance tomorrow to try and do it a different way for it to work out, you know, like to get a good outcome. So,
Yeah.
you know, every day is a new day to start something new.
Yeah, and that is so, yeah.
No matter how many times you got to start.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was funny actually that you say that, because I was reading something about so many people are fearful of failing rather than going, failing is part of the process. If you don't fail, how are you going to move forward?
Yeah, well, and that's how we learn, by failing and making mistakes. You know, we are all human at the end of the day, and you know, but we all get to choose our own journey, no matter what it is. You know.
Yeah, that is so true. And I really want you to share, because I know that you've shared this with me, and I feel like so many people could benefit from this, because I know that even on my hardest days, I've taken, our conversation about your puzzle analogy and I've used it, and I feel like it's really helped and it's so powerful. Can you explain that puzzle analogy to anybody listening?
So part of my trauma counselling, I went to trauma counselling for 2 years, and I don't remember a lot of it, but there was one analogy he used with me, and he said, "Your life is like a jigsaw puzzle. And once you've completed that jigsaw puzzle, there's going to be a piece missing, and that's your arm. And don't ever bother looking for it because it's fucking gone."
Yeah.
And it's like, but you can still see the perfect picture of what it is. You know, you're just missing one piece.
Yep. You don't need to throw in the whole picture just because there's one little puzzle piece missing.
Yeah, that's it. You still see everything in that picture. There's just one piece missing, and that's all it will ever be. It's nothing more or nothing less. And I think, like, and the analogy comes back, stop overthinking it.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that, right? Because I did a video recently about like our roommate, right, in our head, and we all have one. And I said to somebody the other day, if you took your roommate out of your head and sat them next to you, and they were always so negative and always so nasty, would you want to be friends with them? And I was like, 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. So stop listening to them. Stop overthinking it.
But
Do
yeah,
what you
oh,
feels right.
absolutely. So when you come back to like the negative, you know, the way depends how you see things spiritually, I suppose. But everything has a negative and a positive. No matter what we do in life, as far as our body energy, yin and yang, however you want to use the analogy, it's everything is negative and positive, no matter what you do.
Yep. Yep.
Even if it's all positive, there's still going to be a negative there, you
Yep.
know. And that's just how the world works.
And it's kind of getting back to that puzzle, like that piece missing could be that negative, but you don't need to see that to see the whole picture.
Absolutely.
Like,
Like I've seen all the gory photos of the car accident, my arm, that car, I've went and seen my car, what part of the car cut my arm off, the blood all over it, you know, everything, to try and piece it all back together and what went wrong. And at the end, I was like, and that's when he told me about the jigsaw puzzle. And I'm like, you're never going to get the full answers that you want.
yeah, but you can't live your life hoping to get them.
No, because they're, like, it's happened and it's gone, and evidence has been destroyed.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not talking about purposely, like they
Yeah.
get rid of stuff, but I've tried to piece it all back together. I've met the chopper pilots, I've met the paramedics, I've met the police, I've met the trauma team that looked after me for 14 hours. I've
Yeah.
spoken to everybody that I possibly could. I've even spoken to the mum of the two boys that got me out of the car. I've tried to piece it all together, and that's when he used that analogy, and I'm like, cool, I'm cool with that. Let's just move on.
Yeah. So just to anybody listening, like, how can someone apply that? Because I know that it kind of really clicked and resonated with me. But how can someone apply that to their own life when things don't go to plan? Because I feel like everybody has this ideal, plan, and if it doesn't, and life always doesn't go to plan, like, as we know, like, as you said, none of this of your was ever, asked for. So how can people use that regardless of where they are, or if they feel stuck, how can they use this analogy when they feel like things aren't going to plan?
um, Change the way that you think
Yeah.
is probably the biggest one. The second one is, don't be so hard on yourself. You know,
Yeah.
um, goals, when people kick goals, they can go from the littlest to the biggest,
Yeah.
And, like if you've got out of bed today and gone for a walk and that's your goal, then that's your goal. It's not someone else's goal. That's your goal. I set myself goals every day, every week, every month. I'm a bit ADHD like that, but yeah, don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so critical, but don't be so negative either. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like it all comes back to choice. Like every day I choose to get up and make a plan for the day and go, well, this is what I'm going to achieve, or this is who I want to spend my time with. A big part of who we are is who we hang with. You are who you hang with.
Yeah.
If you want positive, hang around positive.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. My dad used to always tell me that. He's like, tell me who your 5 friends are and I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you want to be a successful business person, hang out with successful business. We all have our own formula on what we achieve, find your formula and use it.
Yeah.
And I use my formula is I just use it every day. Like make a plan, and it's okay. Like if I say today I've got to do a 3K run, if I only get through 1.5 Ks of a run, I've still chose to have a go.
Yep. And it doesn't mean that it didn't go to plan. It just means you ran 1.5, you walk 1.5. It doesn't mean that you failed.
Yeah, that's it. And if you fail, you get up and try again. Dust yourself off. Tomorrow's a new day. I get another chance to have a go. And you just keep using it. And sometimes you will fight for the rest of your life to make it, but you're going to make it.
Yeah, no, that is so true. And I can't wait to share that with everybody. And like on your hard days now, like, obviously having such good resilience, what keeps you going?
Allow yourself to have a bad day. If I want to shut my house and sit and cry and allow it, but don't get stuck there. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Allow yourself to go, hey, I'm having a bad day. Allow yourself to be human.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make me a sook. It doesn't make me that that I've failed. It doesn't make me any more than just being human,
Yeah.
I've had a shitty life. I'm allowed to take half a day and go, fuck it, I'm going to cry today. And, I'm female, so hormones are different to a male.
Yeah.
We see males as they have to be strong, they're not allowed to have a bad day, but, we're all human.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that kind of comes back to what you said earlier is that don't be so hard on yourself. Like I really like that. It's really actually stuck with me is that, we have a choice. Every day we get an opportunity to try. It doesn't need to be perfect.
No.
And allow yourself to be human. I feel like if everyone done that and, as you said with that puzzle analogy, is that you don't always need all the pieces to see the picture.
No, you don't.
Like, at the end of the day, like as long as you said, you've got a plan, it might not always go that way each and every day, but, as long as you're trying and you're doing the best you can each day that you have a choice, that's what matters.
I can't remember who it was, but I spoke to someone in the hospital one day and I was having a bad day. And he got a plain piece of paper out of the printer, crumpled it up and then laid it flat again. And he goes, even though it's still like crumpled and it's still a piece of paper.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, or a cup. Like you can smash a cup and then put it back together, glue it back together. It'll still hold water, but it's got flaws, So there's so many different analogies out there.
And I think and I feel like that's, the beauty. And that's why I really wanted to get you onto the podcast and and I have people hear that in between. Like, as you said, I feel like so many people look at people's lives and where they are. And, in our day and age, social media is the worst for it. Everybody posts their wins. Nobody posts their hard days. Nobody hears obviously at the age of 25, your life was turned upside down. You didn't get to where you were in 5 years, 6 months, 3 months. Like, you
Yeah.
know, it's constantly choosing your choices and how you look at things.
Yeah. Since I've been training under you, I've sort of broken my life up into two, you know, what's a sprint and what's a marathon? You
Yeah,
know, is
that's
today going to
exactly
be a
it.
sprint, or what goal am I achieving is going to be a marathon? So, because we need stamina, we've got to last to get to that point, you know, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, you know, I don't know, it's different now, and I have different goals. I've got more time on my hands. My kids have moved out of home. You know,
Yeah.
I've got more time for me, and I don't want to be laying on my deathbed going, what happened to my life?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people forget that. I was having a very kind of similar moral to the story, but a different conversation with someone today about that is like everybody, when it comes to training, and I guess, you know, and that's how we've crossed paths. And it's funny how people, you know, make their way into your life. Like I look at you now as a mother figure, and I've said that to you, so inspiring in so many different ways. But I feel like people lose track of, you know, at the end of the day, we're all going to leave this world.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
you
That's
know,
inevitable.
yeah, like it's inevitable. And I feel like I was having, as I said, kind of a different conversation, but same morals is that, you know, people train for how they aesthetically look and want to look better, but they're really forgetting the underlying that they're giving themselves longevity of life. They're giving themselves better quality of life. Like we lose track of what actually matters and getting stuck in the, you know, the instantaneous, I'm just doing it for this. But what about, as you said, when you're on your deathbed, you don't want to look back and go, I wish I did.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
I know what it's like to nearly lose my life, you know, and multiple times. Not, you know, I've died on the operating table a couple of times, and you know, like I suppose until you've been through something like that, you don't get to where I am and go, well, you know, I've done everything I can to live a good life. You know, some people don't experience any trauma at all, but they're just so negative.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, and then that comes back to choice, you know. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I love my life now. Yes, it's hard. Yes, there are things that I will never do again, you know, but I love my life. I love the people that I have in it. And, you know, coming to your gym and, you know, just normal everyday mums inspire me, you know, like we all have that one thing that we don't like, you know, like
Yeah.
whether it's childhood trauma, whether it's the way we look, whether it's, you know, are we happy in our marriage? You
Yeah.
know, there's like, and everybody around me inspires me because we're all getting up and going and we're all here making it.
Yeah. And I feel like this comes back to like, I guess getting to the end of our podcast, it comes back to the whole thing in terms of don't compare like your goals, and you said it like a couple of minutes ago, is that your goals are your goals. Like just because they might not be as you know big as somebody else's doesn't mean that they're not something to celebrate achieving. It doesn't mean that, you know, you're failing or whatever. It's like your goals are your goals.
Yeah. And, you know, like now my attitude is don't set your goals too high. Like I know I'm middle aged now, I'm 45. You know, my body's been through hell. So you know, I'm not going for a world record. I'm not going for a gold medal. I'm going for better than what I was yesterday.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as you said, it comes down to that mindset as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. You know,
it's yeah.
I love mentoring people. I love, you know, watching people achieve their goals.
Yeah.
I'm not in competition with anyone else.
Yeah, see, and I
That's for
think
sure.
yeah, so I guess, you know, coming to the end of the podcast, like what are some advice that you have for, you know, anybody that might be feeling stuck, or they might be like, I can't, you know, get out of this negative thinking. Like what's some advice just for, you know, anybody that's listening to today's episode that they can start implementing to move them closer to the version of themselves that they deserve to be?
Well, it can be a little bit tricky, like without knowing someone's journey, whether they've been through trauma, whether they haven't, like it's hard to give advice, but reach out to someone that inspires you. Like if you want to come and talk to me, come and talk to me. If your journey is somewhere else, go and speak to someone that's on nearly the same journey as you. If you want to become a good business person, go and sit with business people. Like I've been lucky, in my family. I have like world athletes in my family, so I've sat and spoke to them and gone, what made you, how did you get past it? How do you get past the head noise and go, that's me and that's what I want to achieve? And it is hard, but I don't know, attach yourself to someone that is willing to, like me and you, like you inspire me. We're on completely different journeys, but we still have that connection that we're in the gym, we're training, and I'm just there feeding off you guys, really, where I think you guys feed off me, but.
Yeah, and as you said, it's just because the goals are different, the end goal, I guess, and that's where that inspiration comes from, is just to bettering yourself, is where that connection of, being around other people that, want to better themselves. It doesn't mean that the goals need to be identical. It's just that person wants to be the best version of themselves and you want to be the best version of yourself, and, that sort of thing.
Your goal can't be identical because we're not the same.
No,
not two people are the same. So that analogy, people need to get out of their head, because, we're all one person. No one is the same as us.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, again, I guess, kind of asking you like what was, that one bit of advice, it'd be like, I guess, just kind of correlating everything we've spoken about, is that, do not compare yourself. Your journey is your journey. And, I guess, be the best version of you each day. Don't look at what somebody else is doing and try and be better than them or like them, because your journey is different.
Exactly. No, like I said, not two people are the same. We are completely different individuals, like even you with your training, you don't have the same training program as the person that you train with.
No,
because your body structure is different, everything's different.
Yeah, the time training,
what time you have to oppose to what time that other person has, everything is different for everybody. So you have to set a plan that works for you.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ree, for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to, share this story. And like, I guess I like to call it the messy middle. People see the beginning, people see the end. But I guess, bringing all these people onto the podcast to share their messy middle, to allow people to see that the progress is not always linear. So thank you so much for your time.
No, you're welcome, and I got through it without crying, so.
Yeah, I think I had a bit of a tear in my eye, I'm not going to lie.
I was like, don't choke.
All right, thank you, Ree.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap of today's episode with Ree. Now, if there's one takeaway, it's one takeaway that I would love for anybody to take from today's episode, is we all have a choice. Is that in our life, we're given and dealt a deck of cards, and it's all how we choose to play them. And Ree said it perfectly a couple of times in the podcast today, is that in the way that we think is a huge part of your progress in your journey. And the way that we think about things, there's always going to be a positive and a negative. There's always going to be, this is black, this is white, and it's all how we look at it. And by changing the way you look at things is going to change the way you feel about things and the way you think about things. And comparison, I feel like everybody that I've interviewed lately is that do not compare your goals, do not compare your journey, because not one person in this world is the same. The third takeaway was that puzzle analogy, is that sometimes you need to accept things for what they are. And Ree's puzzle analogy really, really has helped me personally understand that, is sometimes you're not going to find that missing piece to the puzzle. But if it's just one missing piece, it doesn't change the picture. You can still see what it is. So if today's episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share today's episode with someone that might need to hear this, and just like and subscribe to our channel. And until next time, guys, keep it real.